Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Candidate Issues Forum. We're glad to have you here. My name is Hank Dunn. I'll be your moderator tonight for the City Commissioner engagement meeting and questioning. This event, like last week's event, is sponsored by Apopka Involved Voters. It's a community group, and we just seek to better understand the current and emerging issues of our community. The event is designed to acquaint all voters with the candidates running for City of Apopka Commission seats. And the event is being broadcast tonight for the larger audience to see and hear what we're going to ask you tonight. No hard questions, I promise. Well, kind of. We'll see. So we are going to welcome the opportunity this morning to know the candidates, or this afternoon, who are running for mayor. Diane Velasquez, we welcome. Thank you for being here. Nick, Commissioner, yes, Commissioner. Sorry. My old sheet, I thought I caught every area there. Well, we can give a promotion if you're ready to do that. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, yes, Commissioner Diane Velasquez, Nick Nesta, and Wes Dumey. Welcome, folks. Glad you're here. Glad you're able to ask questions, and we're able to ask you about questions. Who is not here tonight is Mr. Eric Mock, who was unable to join us tonight, but we will read a statement that he's given to us. When you guys do your closing conclusions, we'll read that statement from him as well. Tonight's format will be a little bit different than the mayor's debate last week. There will be 2 initial questions that will be asked of all 3 of you. Then there will be 6 individual questions from the community that we've gotten together that will be asked specific to each of you. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes to answer each question, and there's no rebuttal. It's just trying to find out where you think and where you're going. But I do reserve the right to ask a follow-up if I don't understand or I think that maybe need to be clarified. And again, if time permits, there's 2 additional questions at the end of this meeting. We'll talk about that. Rod Olson is our timekeeper again, and he's going to keep us to the allotted time by holding up signs for you. So when he holds up that signs, you'll know whether it's a minute left or more. We ask that you, the candidates, and the audience follow through with guidelines for civility and respect, which we know you will. That's not a problem. We're here to learn your stand on the issues and not what you necessarily think of each other, right? So that's good. And so we also ask you, as candidates, please turn off your cell phones, and audience, if you have the same thing, please make sure they're off at this time. And as previously indicated, we will give that additional 2 minutes at the end to ask specific questions of all 3 of you again, but again, it depends on the answers and the timing. So before we begin, we'd like to give each candidate a chance to talk about themselves and maybe why they're running or seeking re-election in this case. So we're going to begin with Ms. Velasquez.
Is it on? Okay. First, I want to thank Victory Church for opening their doors to allow this forum to take place. I am Commissioner Diane Velasquez. I live here in Apopka almost 18 years with my husband, Ed, and we're proud parents of 2 children and proud grandparents of 2 grandchildren. I have been involved in the city pretty much the whole time that I've been here as a resident. I held the seat from 2014 to 2018, and then after that I was appointed as the Planning and Zoning Commission Commissioner for the Orange County Board. You know, I love the city of Apopka. It's very important to me that we engage our residents, and most importantly, that in the engagement, we learned what's important to them, the issues, their concerns. And, you know, as we go, when we meet at council meetings, the most important thing is that when I'm voting, that I'm voting for the benefit of our city and that I'm voting for the benefit of our residents. And, you know, this is what I enjoy doing. I do it with my heart, and I really enjoy being out with the residents at events, supporting schools, being a mentor for young people. This is what I enjoy. I'm a retired, I forgot to say this, but I am a retired law enforcement officer. I spent 21 years. So public service has sort of been something that I have always done with a lot of love. So this is who I am. I hope that everyone realizes that this is something I have dedicated myself to, public service, very proud of it. And I hope that when on election day that they come out and they continue to vote for me to represent them.
Thank you very much. Nick Nesta.
Thank you so much for the Apopka involved voters and Victory Church for opening your doors to us. And thank you to everyone in attendance as well as everyone watching on the live stream. My name is Nick Ness and I'm running for seat 4 City Commission. I moved to Apopka in 1994. I graduated from Apopka High School in 2008 and graduated from UCF with an undergrad and graduate degree in real estate. I understand what it's like to grow up in Apopka, and I understand our very rich cultural history here. I started my business here. I met my wife here. We have our beautiful twins now here as well, and we really want to grow the city to how it should be. Our city's experienced incredible growth in that same respect, and we must look towards new and unique ways to grow the city correctly. The city requires somebody that will be transparent, fiscally responsible with the city's funds, create strategies that protect citizens' investments, and make decisions based on facts, not emotions. And I'm the candidate that embodies these attributes. I humbly ask for your vote come March 8th. I feel that I am the best candidate, the most qualified that shows up and is able to make a difference come once elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. West-Dumy.
Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here. You know, you didn't ask what I think about the other candidates, but I'll say it's a great honor to be up here with both Diane and Nick. This is a lot of fun for me. I'm running for seat number 2, and one of the reasons I was doing this is most of you heard my story about my accidental country drive about 15 years ago, but I was driving through Apopka unintentionally, and I discovered this town. At the time, I lived in Tampa, and I said, boy, that's a neat little town. I need to learn more about it. Well, I happened to stop at Porky's Barbecue and had a pretty good barbecue sandwich. That enticed me to come back again. But then I came here, and I started knowing people and meeting people, and I bought a house here, and I'm just glad to be here. I think it's a beautiful town. We are a small town, and I like that, but it has big town opportunities, and we're close enough to Orlando to have other opportunities, but far enough away to have our own culture and heritage. That's one thing I always want to keep in mind when I'm talking about Apopka, is preserving our unique culture and heritage and never becoming a generic suburb of Orlando. Now, specifically, why am I running this race? I've heard that a few times. Well, I started following this back in the 2020 election when Nick and Diane were battling each other, and you know, I saw some of the answers, and I thought, you know, I have some different ideas on certain things. And then it's just interesting to discover that, you know, this is a 35 square mile city, you know, with approximately 55,000 residents, 17,000 households, $131 million city budget with 492 employees. And you have a situation in this election that you could have 3 of the 4 city commissioners living in the same neighborhood. Now, I love Rock Springs Ridge. I don't live there, but it's a nice place. But I live on the southeast side of Apopka, and I thought, you know, there's nobody really representing that area in Apopka. That's why I decided to run in this race. And I'm glad to be here. And I look forward to the questions tonight and answering them.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Let's begin the questioning tonight with Commissioner Velasquez. So, you ready for this one?
Go ahead.
It's going to be a good. In the having a question tonight. I'm having a problem tonight. In the Apopka City Charter, the role of the city commissioner is not well defined, which gives commissioners an opportunity to define it for themselves. If re-elected, how would you define your role as city commissioner?
That was a question that was kind of asked, and actually that's a very good question, because one of my platforms, if reelected, is to revisit that city charter, to do exactly that, to kind of define what our roles are, because each of us as a commissioner, we kind of reinvent ourselves as to what's important to us. And for me, it has always been to really connect with the people. And the way I have done that is basically just being out in the community, going to a lot of the different organizations, HOA meetings, schools, speaking with parents, making myself accessible to the residents, and really giving them as much information as I can give them, educating them on the roles of our city, and in defining how our government runs, our local government, which is really a lot of our residents don't understand what a strong mayor government is. So when I, meet with residents and, voters, that's the one thing I do stress to them, because I want them to understand that as commissioners, one commissioner cannot make a huge difference or a big impact. When they understand the role that as commissioners, we're sort of the checks and balances, and we're their voice when there's a concern, an issue, and because the mayor is the one that drives the day-to-day operations. And so it's really educating the people and really engaging them, because for me, as a commissioner, I need to know what is important to the residents when I am making decisions for the city and for them and our communities.
Thank you. Mr. Nesta, this is for you. If you were elected, what detailed policies would you support to protect residents' property investments and their ability to accumulate wealth on their investments from encroaching developments?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry. I've got to go back to you. The original question were all, I've got my notes mixed up here. I do need to ask you the same question that I asked Commissioner.
and I thought so as well. I
Yes.
was going to correct you, though,
Yeah,
but
no,
I
no,
thought
that-
so.
no,
as
that's
well.
good,
I
that's
wrote
good.
down the rules.
It was good. That was good.
No problem. And I don't need you to repeat it either, unless
You
you'd
sure?
like to.
Okay.
No problem. So it's basically, what is the Apopka charter doesn't completely define what the role of a commissioner is. And for me, when I'm asked this question, and it does come up often, is I say that we're lifestyle creators. We influence the lifestyles of the people within our city boundaries. We influence our futures in reference to the question you just asked, in reference to our investments, things like that. We can create multi-generational wealth just on the city council level if we enact certain programs or ordinances that influence or help to promote certain investment strategies, things like that. We, on the city council level, are able to advocate for different areas of Apopka as well. As much as I live in a community that other commissioners may live in, it's evident that I'm advocating and out there already, helping other communities, making sure that everybody's represented equally. So we also understand, through the advocacy of different areas, we understand different needs, and half of that is effective communication. We need to be able to effectively communicate, and half of that is listening. Going to where people are, meeting them where they're at versus making them come to us. Going to each and every different little pocket of Apopka, because we do have little sub-pockets in Apopka that are really unique and cool and have their own cultural backgrounds, things like that. And I think it's important that we communicate effectively and listen to individuals and the citizens' needs on that level. So that's what I feel a commissioner's job is. I think that's their role, is lifestyle creator. Make sure that they understand what citizens are wanting for in the city of Apopka, and to make decisions based on those findings. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dumi, same question. Would you like me to repeat it, or you got
Nope,
it?
I got it.
Okay.
Well, first off, let me tell you why I'm not doing this, and it's not for the money, that's for sure. But to kind of build on what both Nick and Diane said, I think listening is a big part of it. You know, the Lord gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I intend to use them in that order, and that ratio as far as listening to speaking. But one of the things that I want to do as a commissioner is, and I mentioned this to you, Hank, when we came in earlier. The last 6 weeks, I've really enjoyed getting out and talking to people and hearing their different issues on certain things. I mean, I've been doing that for a long time. But now I'm doing it in a quasi-official capacity where I may actually have an opportunity to make a difference. Before it was hypothetical. Now it's a reality that could happen. And just going out and listening to people. I had a gentleman tell me in a neighborhood in the southeast of Apopka, near where I live, and he said, I always wanted to build a swimming pool in my backyard, but I never did because my yard backs up to a busy street, and I was always terrified that a car would come around that corner at excessive speed and go through that wall and take out my kids in the swimming pool. Listening to stuff like that is important to me. And, you know, I told him, I said, hey, I can't guarantee I'll do anything about it, but I guarantee you what I will do is I'll ask the question of why haven't we done anything about this yet, and is there something that can be done? That's all I can do. I don't want to overpromise and under-deliver as a commissioner, because as Diane said, you're 1 out of 4, right? We can only help guide, and we can help build consensus and hopefully help persuade each other on what the best path forward is. But as a commissioner, I like to go out and talk to people. I would go out and listen. I'll say this now, I don't know if this question will come up later, but earlier today, somebody had asked me to go out and look at the condition on Rogers Road, which is out off Lester Road. And I drove out there. I took my Chevy Super Sport out there and went for a country drive. This is a beautiful day. And I just rolled down the window, and luckily I didn't get shot, because I asked the lady, I said, hey, can I ask you a question? And she said, yeah. And I said, what's bothering you out here? How do you feel about this road? And her son told me that his scooter is faster than my car. That's how the discussion started, which was fun. But she said, I'm concerned about the road, because I'm afraid, because this road is too narrow, I'm afraid somebody's going to get hurt in a head-on crash on this road. That's the kind of examples that I intend to do as a commissioner.
Thank you. And again, we go back to Commissioner Velasquez, and I apologize for getting out of order, but these are the last joint questions for a moment. Again, if you were elected or re-elected in this case, what detailed policies would you support to protect residents' property investments and their ability to accumulate wealth on their investments from encroaching developments?
I know that the city is undergoing currently right now we're approving a lot of new developments. So one of the things that I rely on is our community development department, that as they review these new developments, that they are consistent and comparable to the existing communities around them. And that's how we protect the existing communities, is by ensuring that what we are approving is going to benefit them and also increase the value of their homes and their property. And one of the things we also do is to make sure that the infrastructure that is affected and the infrastructure that's affected in these new developments will also benefit their community. And that's basically what we do as commissioners when we sit on the council, is as we approve these new developments, is to make sure that they're consistent and comparable to the existing communities. And also just to make sure that even, as we bring new communities, that we are also taking care of their communities, the roads, the signs, the beautification in front of their communities. We want to make sure that we can also bring them up to standard. So that's what we do.
Okay, thank you. Same question, Mr. Nesta.
Sure. So one of the things that we're dealing with right now in Apopka, it's protecting PUDs. The agreements that are already in place, I think, is important to protect citizens' investments. Additionally, it's understanding changing consumer preferences. Just because we build one product or we want one product type of a home or a business here in Apopka, we think so on the commission level, doesn't mean that consumers at a whole want that same thing. So it's understanding, again, it kind of goes back to question one, being in the trenches with each individual homeowner or business owner or what have you, understanding what they want, understanding what new homeowners coming into the area are wanting and desiring and paying a premium for. To echo Commissioner Velasquez, infrastructure. We have huge development coming in, and making sure that our infrastructure can keep up with it is ideal to maintaining property values and increasing property values. One thing, too, that it's a little bit different way of looking at it is implementing and advocating for programs that help some consumers, some homeowners here in Apopka that maybe aren't even homeowners yet, but teaching them how to become homeowners. I think advocating to have more of those programs a little more accessible. I know there are some of those programs, but making those more accessible to individuals in the city will help to create long-term wealth and multi-generational wealth. So it's a different way to look at it as well. You may not own a business or a home right now, but making sure that we're advocating for those individuals that can kind of get a step up and start creating wealth that way. Another one is, and I referenced it in my opening statement, is just long-term investment strategies on the council level. So making sure that we are investing as a city correctly, that we're paying off debts that make sense, that we're investing our funds that are in something that has a high yield, things like that, that helps to ensure the city's in fiscally responsible health. Then we don't have to raise any type of taxes, things like that on the long term, which helps long-term investments for individuals as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Toomey.
Okay, so everybody knows I love economics, or if you don't know, now you know. You don't want to know how to get 20 forecasts? Ask 10 economists a question. Because on one hand, you have this, and on the other hand, you have this. So, and I bring that to this answer here. Because on one hand, you have people that have maybe 10, 20 acres of land out in the northwest part of Apopka, off Ponkin Road or whatnot, that want to sell that to a developer because that was something that maybe their parents lived on and it was a farm or whatnot. And that's their retirement wealth. And at the other hand, you have people that live nearby that don't want to see it sold like that. So it's a matter of really just coming to a common mind and saying, this is what we're going to approve that's congruent with the existing use and nearby uses. So I want to make sure we always consider where we're going and where we're at today. Nick also touched on it with, as consumer tastes and preferences change, we have to be willing to change as well. Maybe 10 years ago, 5-acre parcels were more popular, where now it's more down to an acre, 2 acres type thing. So we just have to make sure to change. one thing to protect people's investments is making Apopka a beautiful city and keeping it in some people's minds and in other people's minds, enhancing it to be a more beautiful city. I love the natural parks, the springs, the live oak trees, the different natural beauty we have, and I hope we can maximize those opportunities and keep this a beautiful city and make it even more so, cleaning up certain things to make it, and that goes back to the old the adage of the rising tide lifts all boats. And if people's property values are rising, their wealth is rising, whenever they decide to sell, if they decide to sell, that they can do so and maybe retire off that. And if they don't want to sell because of the homestead exemption, they won't be priced out of there for taxes. I think that's also an important thing.
Okay, thank you. Now we get to the individual questions. Apologies for that. So we're going to start with Mr. Dumey again. Would you support any development within the boundaries of Rock Springs Ridge and Errol Estates? If so, why? And if not, why?
No.
Why?
So you want to know why? Because this goes back to what Nick was talking about, the planned unit development, the PUDs, and I'm sorry, the urban development. Yeah, it's an agreement that we made earlier with the developers. This is what's going to be built, and now it's built. And just because some things have changed, I don't think that's fair to existing property owners that if somebody bought their house and they're on a golf course and they bought it specifically and they may have paid more for it because it's on a golf course, and now suddenly they have to find out that maybe that golf course is going to become an apartment complex. I just don't think that's right, and I wouldn't want to see that happen to anybody, given that it's called, the legal term is reliance, right? I relied on the fact that was going to be a golf course when I bought this place. Otherwise, I wouldn't have paid near as much for it. So, no, I don't really see any reason why we would want to revisit that issue.
Okay, thank you. Next question for Commissioner Velasquez. Would you support the purchase of adjacent land next to Camp Weewa for expansion? If so, why? If not, why?
So I'm proudly going to say that I did support the purchase of Camp Weewa, and the reason for supporting Camp Weewa was because I saw the value of a park. We are known as Apopka is known for its green space, its parks, its springs, and when I walked into Camp Weewa, I just realized the beauty of it. 70 acres, I could not even think of selling it to a development. And I know that it kind of came at a bad time for us, but I feel that Camp Weewa is a gem and that it will be a benefit for all our city. As far as the property that's connected to it, that's under consideration right now. Would I consider it? I would have to wait until the environmental report came in. But at this time, I feel like Camp Weewa is actually the one that I would prefer at this moment. But I'm waiting for the environmental report on the neighboring acreage before I would even consider it.
Okay, thank you. This question's for Mr. Nesta. What model would you recommend in order to develop consensus among all parties to place the South Apopka annexation question on the ballot?
I'm sorry, I didn't even hear that.
Yeah. What model would you recommend in order to develop consensus among all parties to place the South Apopka annexation question on a ballot?
So I feel, and your guys' questions are always so specific. I appreciate them. It's an open communication model. It's one that understands what all the pros, all the cons are, and I think putting them in a very realistic, open light, not negative, not positive, just here's the facts, and here's how this affects both citizens currently within the city of Apopka limits and both the people that are not within the city limits that could be annexed. I think presenting facts that way, open communication, meeting all the individuals at all the parties as many times as possible, as many times as needed, to answer the questions that are out there, to make sure that there's a comfort level, and then take a vote from there. That's one of the first things, actually, just answering a questionnaire from a local newspaper, and they were asking the same thing of what's the first thing you want to do once you get elected, and it's going to be, let's put the South Apopka annexation, let's finalize it one way or the other. Let's get on the ballot and let's vote on it. And it's through open communication. We got to have both sides speaking openly, freely, and also having the facts out there, because it may not be the best benefit for everyone, or it may be. We need to see all the facts, and I'm not sure we have those just yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dumey, you stated publicly that you would support a loan to purchase the old golf course at Rock Springs Ridge. Why do you support the purchase?
Okay, so whenever I did that interview, I was still learning about the facts, so maybe a good lesson learned was to not speak too soon. But the reality is, I've done some research on it, and the golf course, which is owned by the golf group, and which is not owned by the HOA, and what I've learned in the meantime is that there are banks and organizations that will loan money to HOAs for the purposes of acquiring property, like the golf courses. Truist Bank is one of these. They do what they call HOA loans. And at that point, because the property owners, the earlier three-way swap that was being talked about would have basically resulted in the HOA buying the golf course from the city, which was going to swap land for it, right? So this is basically the same way to do it, but now the HOA goes directly to a bank, and it's a commercial transaction, keeps the city out of it, it's very clean, and it's directly between the HOA and the bank. I think that's the best way to go forward. If that situation fails, then yes, I would certainly look into loaning the HOA money to buy the golf course, simply because it is a secured loan, because the HOA would be assessed for that, the property owners would be assessed. So it's basically a can't-lose proposition. I prefer to see it go through the private market first.
Just to follow, would you do the same process for Errol Estates?
Yes.
Okay. This is for Mr. Nesta. We're going back the other way. Do you believe residents that are directly impacted by encroaching development should have the same right to negotiate with developers and the city over such issues as the types of development, density, traffic, et cetera? If so, why? And if not, why not?
Sure, so absolutely. I think that's one of the, and I don't remember what event I brought that up at, but it's empowering the citizens to be able to negotiate directly with developers. It seems like our current process, we go, and I'm at every single meeting of these, that starts at the planning, or the DRC, Development Review Committee. Then it goes to planning and zoning, kind of bounces back and forth there, and then gets to City Hall, or City Council, to where it's finally voted on. The problem is, it gets to City Hall, and that's when citizens start coming out and saying, well, we want this instead, we want that instead. But unfortunately, we're months down the road, and it's way too deep into the process that we need to have a lot more conversations, a lot more community involvement, and provide that community involvement and promote it at the DRC meeting, at the planning and zoning, which you do have the option as a citizen to go to those, but I'm not sure it's as conversational or a dialogue as much as it would promote being able to negotiate with these developments and developers to say, we want a bigger wall, we want a different product, we don't want to back up to townhomes, we don't want to back up to single-family homes, whatever it may be. Providing those opportunities for citizens to come in and negotiate, and providing them power is what will, number one, increase property values and increase a buy-in to the community, and it'll make people appreciate Apopka more, and it'll keep people here longer. Thank you.
Kind of a follow-up question for Commissioner Velasquez. What changes would you propose to the city's current development approval process, if any, and why?
To the development,
Approval process, the city's approval process.
we have the DRC, which is a staff meeting that's open to the public, but the public is not allowed to speak. So maybe I would change that where they would allow some public speaking, especially if the neighbors or the residents are coming out because they realize that there is a new development coming to their neighborhood. And that would give an insight to the developers that are there trying, going before the staff, that they would hear their concerns. We already have our planning and zoning that the residents can come out, and it's public hearing. By the time, like Nick Nestor said, that when they come to the city council meetings, the process has really gone down the road. And so we can tweak and ask for a couple of changes, but we can't make any major changes. So what would I do? I would like to see our development community, when they are seeing the developers, that they give us some kind of review, that something that was addressed, that by the time we get it, we have some background of why they approved it or disapproved it. That would be something that I would like to see. Because sometimes when we get them at the city council meeting, I don't always know what the feedback was at the DRC. I do know what the feedback is at P&Z because I get to tune into those because they're public meetings.
Okay, thank you. Back to Mr. Dumey. If gentrification was the only option in order to expand the city center, would you support the expansion? If so, if not, why not?
Okay, so let's talk about this. Gentrification to expand the city center, or what are we talking about? First of all, define gentrification, and second of all, define what you mean by city center.
The new city center that's been proposed.
Okay, so the new city center that's going to be down here at 441 and 436. And what do we mean by gentrification?
Typically meaning that new building moves out people who've been there for a long time.
I don't really see that as being a problem down there right now because the current plans are being built on open land that's currently not developed. So the city center will be just kind of around the locus of 441 and McGee, kind of south there to the hotel, and then to the north side, kind of northeast towards the Dairy Queen. So I don't really think that anybody would be forced to move out of that area. So I'm typically, as a general rule, I'm against forcing people to move out of their property. And, I've been following this from a long time. I think it was Kelo versus the state of Connecticut back in 2003 when they were talking about people being forced to sell their homes. People should be willing or able to sell their homes at a price which they're happy with. And if they want to stay there till they're done, then let somebody else deal with it. I'm typically a fan of not forcing people out of their homes.
Yeah. Gentrification typically happens where somebody comes in and pays a lot more for property than the current owners can afford to pay, and property values go up and makes it difficult to stay sometimes.
Well, the homeowner's exemption, if they're a homeowner, it would protect them from basically the taxes being raised out of their control on that.
Right. Okay. For Commissioner Velasquez again, what CRA development code strategies would you introduce to expand the productivity of the CRA as it relates to creating incentives for investments?
Definitely to attract businesses to come in, retail to come in, just build the area up. I know there's a lot of parcels that are privately owned, and one of them would be to go out and find these property owners and let them know that their property can be developed. So it definitely would be to promote development. And the CRA would be to promote affordable housing and also to bring in small businesses, commercial. Those are the things that we need in the south side of Apopka right now, because there's a lot of open parcels that are owned by private owners, and we're not tapping into that to actually encourage them to build and to either sell or build, and give them the opportunity and the benefits that we have in the CRA, and encourage them to come out and develop in that area, rather than to sit on the property and it does nothing for the community.
Okay, thank you. This goes back to Mr. Nesta. A recent RFP was advertised to solicit proposals for a mixed-use development at Station Street and did not meet expectation. Given today's market conditions, what type and density of development would be justifiable?
Whatever the market bears. But having the background that I do in real estate, it's something that is beneficial and similar to what both candidates up here had previously spoken about. Development is something that matches what's already going on in the surrounding area. What's in the plans? What was the goal for that site originally? What I've heard and things that were originally promoted were having a mixed-use development there. Retail on the first floor, retail office, and then multifamily on top. So that would mix with what was already going on in that area that has new businesses coming in there, and would really create a pretty incredible kind of synergistic value between all the businesses, that we could have little events on that street, things like that. So that's what I feel would be the most appropriate there, is pretty much what was already presented effectively, but just not completely agreed on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This question back to Commissioner Velasquez. What is your position as it relates to who should pay for the backflow preventer inspections and repairs?
It's mandated by the state right now. So at this juncture, we are now educating them about backflow. Initially, when I realized that the backflow was the expense was going to fall on the residents, we at the city council we were discussing it, and we've sort of settled on that the city will go out and do the testing at a fixed rate because social media and the residents were all kind of alarmed that it was being mandated, and they had all different prices, costs, I should say, just for the test alone. So at this juncture, what the city has done was to say, okay, we will do the testing and we will charge all the residents the same fixed price. Who should pay for it? At this juncture, because it's state mandated, we don't have the funds for it. We did not have the funds allocated for it. At some point, once we get this program going, the one thing I like to see is to have some funding for those residents who cannot afford it, and that we can help them to pay for some of the expense. And we will have to cross that hurdle once we start to get the test results and see how many backflows have to be replaced. So we're still working on that at this point. So I know that we had agreed that the residents can call the city, put themselves on the list. That would preclude them from having the drop-dead date to have it inspected. And it's a flat fee of $60. And if they need help in paying that cost, that we can make arrangements to break that expense down for them.
Okay, thank you. Back to Mr. Dumey. You stated publicly that you would push back on a high-density development and support a smart growth plan. What provisions would your smart growth plan contain, and how would you adopt your smart growth plan into law?
Okay, one thing, I want to step back just to the last question. If anybody's curious in the research, it's Kelo versus City of New Haven was the law case where a couple was forced to sell their home for a city to build a city center through eminent domain. Anyways, to answer your question about smart growth, let me touch back to an answer I said earlier about the Carriage Hill neighborhood where I was out off Rogers Street. When I drove through there, I thought that was pretty nice because the homes were not right on top of each other. There was plenty of green space, there were sidewalks, the roads were nice and wide inside the neighborhood. To me, that's smart growth because there's a lot of natural beauty that's being protected as well. Then I drove out on Ponkin Road and I noticed that there was a subdivision inside Orange County where the homes were very close together and almost so much that you could probably shake hands out the windows, and that's the way it's been described to me. And I'm not a huge fan of that kind of development because it squeezes out the natural beauty of our area, which is the trees, the grass, and all the natural wildlife. So the smart growth platform is just built on what our natural attributes are. We have such a beautiful city with trees and wildlife and flora and plants, the indoor foliage capital and all that. Let's maximize that and optimize that whenever we're approving new neighborhoods. And I know there's some stuff done to that in the land development code as well, but that's really where I want to focus, is to make sure that, in 20 years from now, I'm not talking like 5 years from now, I'm talking 20 years from now, if I'm elected your commissioner, I want to drive through here and say, I'm proud of the way we look. I'm proud to say that I was part of that. I don't want to sit there and say, I sold the city short. I don't want to do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nesta, back to you. What budget initiatives would you personally spearhead for the next 4 years?
Well, this is a special election, so I'll only be finishing out the term for 2 years, so it won't be 4. But should I get reelected after that, it'll be a total of 6. But it's making sure, and I had some discussions this week actually about this, and it's ensuring that our millage rate stays consistent with what the citizens demand. I think that's the most important thing, making sure that we have fully funded our growing city. We can't keep using what has worked in the past because it's a new city now. We've grown to an almost exponential rate in the last year or 2 years. So making sure that we keep up with what's happening and have our pulse to understand exactly how to adjust our budget correctly. One is just keep an eye on the millage rate. we don't necessarily need to raise taxes because we have a larger, with the new development, we're building more of a tax base. So understanding what that new future development will bring in tax-wise makes it so that we don't have to be raising taxes. So it helps us to understand, and having a pulse on the new development and what's coming down the road is very important and key, and that's something that I've been doing for the last year and a half, is understanding all the new development, all the new multifamily projects, new neighborhoods, things like that, that are part of our tax basis that is increasing, and that helps to adds to our budget, and we need to understand that correctly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Velasquez, the old Albertson storefront has been vacant for some time. What retailers would you focus on to fill those kinds of vacant spaces?
That has been, and that's a great question, because I think in all the years that I've been here, when Albertsons went out of business, the residents kind of waited. We've been waiting for all these years, what's coming in there? And we've been asking, is anything coming in there? That strip mall, which is privately owned, I would like to see another supermarket come in there. I think it's necessary. When Albertsons was there, it serviced the community by having a choice. Right now, we just have one supermarket, and we have one that's across 441. So I would like to see another supermarket go in there.
Okay, thank you. Back to Mr. Dumey. What specific policies would you champion to curb urban sprawl?
Define urban sprawl. No, I'm kidding. No, but seriously, again, it comes back to the smart growth strategy that we need to make sure that we maximize our natural beauty and our open spaces. And if you do that and you do it right, you won't have to worry about urban sprawl where you have apartment complexes backing up to greenhouses, backing up to 10-acre horse ranch out on Round Lake Road. We won't have to worry about that. You know, and when I'm talking about urban sprawl, I'm talking about the far fringes of the city. You know, if people are looking for high density, you know, high rises and stuff, then maybe they should look in Maitland or somewhere else, because we have to focus on what makes Apopka beautiful and what is the heritage here. Now, you know, if people come up and say, hey, that's what we want to focus on is high density sprawl, then I guess I'd have to have a revision of my strategy. But I really want to focus on building things that are consistent and congruent with other uses.
Okay, thank you. Back to Mr. Nesta. What proposals would you present to the City Commission to improve the overall appearance of the main business corridor of the city?
Interesting question. This just recently came up in a planning and zoning meeting in December, I think early December, is that, actually that may have been November, but either way, it came up in the same conversation of all the dollar stores, that it was in that same topic of that we want to reduce the amount of dollar stores or the density of dollar stores within the city limits. And in that same breath, somebody had said, somebody on the Planning and Zoning Commission board had said that we don't like the aesthetic of it. That's one of our big problems, is that they're hearing that it just doesn't fit what they feel is right. And then there was a reference to some cities in South Florida that have very consistent, every building, every bank, every retailer, they have the same storefronts, or very similar storefronts that are all congruent. They all look the same, and it's a little more appealing to the eye. So it would be implementing something that creates a plan for congruency, something that creates a city frontage as you drive through that is similar, that has similar streetscapes, that has similar color schemes, things like that that are pleasing to the eye. I mean, many cities do this. This isn't, I'm not making this up. I'm not the genius that coming up with this. This is what is happening in many other cities similar to ours, that we can easily adjust and apply to any new development that's coming in. And there's a lot of, with our land development code changing, we're doing lots of new amendments, things like that. We can add those to that to say, you know, for whether it's industrial, warehouse, more retail, mixed use. Mixed use is a big thing we're kind of pushing right now. It's not happening as much as we'd like, but it is being pushed. So I think with all those new developments, that would be a new policy that I would definitely champion.
Okay, thank you. And back to Commissioner Velasquez. Recently, the city approved depositing $31 million in one Florida bank. Did you support this deposit, or would you have done something differently? If so, what would you have done differently?
Oh, that's a good question. So this one, I will say this. It did not occur while I was in office. I learned about it just recently. At this juncture, it's sitting in the bank, and when I did question our chief administrator, he said that they were offering a higher rate of interest, and that's why it went into that bank. So I have to kind of take his word for it. At this point, it's sitting in the bank. I understand there's a process. I understand that for investments, you don't need the city council's approval, but when you are taking the general fund into a bank, that it does need to go before a city council. Again, I was not on the board when that was done.
Thank you. And last single question goes to Mr. Nesta. What industries do you believe Apopka officials need to focus on to bring to the city? And I do have one more question for Mr. Dumi as well. Sorry.
So repeat that, please. Sorry.
What industries do you believe Apopka officials need to focus on to bring to the city?
So we've heard this many times, especially during this election cycle, is just restaurants. Restaurants are great, but we do need a base for that. I think, and it references back to the last question of mixed use, something that has retail spots, things like that, that whether it's office space and more office space, I know we do have some in the works for that. We have millions of square feet of industrial coming into Apopka in the next probably year and a half. I mean, millions on the west side corridor of Apopka going up 429 there, and because of that, we're going to have huge employment sector, and that's going to be huge for us. So I think we have the base of employment happening now, and restaurants will be fed through that. So we have a decent balance of businesses right now, especially with that new industrial. Once that industrial starts coming online, that's going to be huge for us. But we also have new office space coming in, things like that will help to kind of do cherry on top for that as well. So we're heading in the right direction. Our DRC and Planning Commission are doing great, making sure that projects meet what the city's wanting, and then we just need to champion what we're hearing from every single citizen, restaurants. We just need to champion that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And actually, final question for Mr. Dumi. What economic development policies would you propose over the next 4 years to build a more resilient business economy?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, because I was going to ask you if you were going to ask me about that. For economic development, let me just kind of delve into a sidebar on this for a personal example. Some of you know that I was interested in opening a brewery nearby to this building. It's actually not too far from here. And one of the things I ran up against was some of the land development code were prohibiting changes that I would like to make. Let me give you a couple examples on this. First of all, I said I have an outdoor area. I'd like to build a nice fence to make it feel like a farm out there. I'm talking nice fence, nice grass, nice landscaping. Nope, can't do it. The city code prohibits that kind of fence. And I'm talking like a field fence. It would look like a farm. Then they said, okay, you got to spend, at the time it was $4,000 to put a sidewalk in. It was roughly 65 feet. They basically went nowhere because, again, as a part of a change in use, you have to bring things up to the current land development code. Then I have to pave the driveway. Some of this stuff I don't mind doing. But what I would like to do as an economic development is have tiered levels for this, because it's really hard to go to somebody like me that's already invested a sizely six-figure sum in this and say, oh, by the way, you have to go and invest another $100,000 before you can even make $1 worth of revenue. I mean, you're going to lose money in something like this for a couple of years, most likely. And, at some point, you got to stop the bleeding and say, look, at this point, it doesn't make sense. So what I would do as a business owner and a commissioner, I would work to change the land development code to say, hey, you got to do this. This is your base layer. You got to make sure it looks appealing. It's got to be painted. It's got to be meet ADA accessibility. Then you get open, and then we sign in a contract with the city. It says, whenever I reach X number of revenue, then I will make these enhancements. And you can do that over and over, because all these things that the city is requesting is stuff I would like to do. I just don't want to have to do it on day one, because that's prohibitive for a business owner, especially somebody that's bootstrapping businesses that doesn't necessarily come in here with $10 million in the bank. I sure wish I had that problem, but I don't. So that's one of the things that I would do as a commissioner, is to focus on what we can do to make it more accessible for small businesses to get in here under a tiered plan, get running, get open, make revenue, build business, then do phase 2, blah, 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 et cetera.
Okay, thank you. And we're back to two final questions that will be asked. The same two questions will be asked of all of you. And we'll start with Commissioner Velasquez again. What three issues over the next 4 years will have the greatest impact on the quality of life for Apopka, and why do you think that?
The three issues. One will be, for me, is the beautification of the city, the landscape. That's been a subject that the residents have constantly gone on social media. It's something that is when you go everywhere, you go to the supermarket, and that is one of the issues that I hear often is that the city doesn't present Apopka the way we say it should represent. That would be an issue. That would be an incentive, is to, all right, have a strategic plan. How do we start addressing the right-of-ways, the trees, the beautification? The other thing for me also is signage. I've been saying that for a long time. We have the 429, the 451. We're building, warehouses. But when you come to Apopka, there's nothing here that says, welcome to Apopka. City Hall is in this direction. The Jason Dwelly Park is in that direction. The signs are not inviting. You almost miss them. So signage is really making Main Street look like Main Street with signage. And the other thing that's important is the staff. We're growing, and I want to make sure that our staff is able to provide the services for our growing city, especially our first responders, which is the fire department, the police department, our public services. I want to make sure that as we grow, so do those departments to meet the demands of serving our community. So those are three issues that are important to me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Nesta, same question?
Yeah, so my three kind of hot button items, especially ones that, to your point, or to the question, impact quality of life. The first one is ending the open-endedness of the South Apopka annexation, one way or the other. Let's stop the conversation, let's get it on the ballot, and let's figure out what the citizens on both sides, on South Apopka unincorporated and incorporated Apopka would like. The next one is promoting new businesses. We do that to an extent, but I think there can be more incentives to new businesses. I was just at a ribbon cutting yesterday for Lula May's Eatery in South Apopka, and it was absolutely incredible, the support that's there. And the community has come together to help support her. And the city has too. The city has, I learned yesterday, the city paved a new, not sidewalk, but a driveway for them, effectively, a parking lot. And what I love too is if we can promote minority and women-owned businesses. I mean, that's exactly what Lula May's is, and just the passion behind that is absolutely incredible. So I think bringing more of that to Apopka, and it's already here. There are citizens that have little incredible ideas, and if we can just promote that and create incentives a little bit more, at least educate on the incentives, I think that's huge, and that will create a lot more buy-in to the city and create even that much more passion. My final one is creating trust between our council and the citizens as well as the staff. I think there's a little bit of a fracture between the current trust in our council, current council that's sitting, and the citizens and the staff. I think there's just some tumultuousness that's going on within the community as well as at City Hall that needs to end. We want to grow, and we want to grow together and not in a fractured way, and I think that's one of my hot button items that improve quality of life. If you can trust who's leading, you can go to bed a deeper sleep at night. I mean, it just helps you enjoy your community that much more. So those are my three kind of hot button topics that I'll be focusing on once elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dumey, same question.
Great. To build on the last question about the business forward investment. Business forward, I want to attract new businesses and retain existing businesses. It might be a really long ride home now that my wife knows how much money I've spent on this brewery project tonight. But the reality is, and I want to make sure that I preface that I was exceptionally satisfied with the answers I got from the community development team. There was nothing that they could have done otherwise because their hands were constrained by the land development code. There's only so much they can do and wiggle room on that. So I just want to make sure that we are amenable to people that come and they're willing to work. We should be willing to work with them and make sure that we can make things happen. That's one of the things that I think has hindered business development here. It's a lot easier to go to maybe other towns and get stuff done at times. Strategic investment. And you know, Diane also mentioned this, beautification of town, you know, making the medians look nice. And some of this stuff we can do at fairly low cost because people will volunteer to do it. I know I would volunteer to plant flowers. I love planting flowers. Sorry, babe, I haven't got your flower bed done yet, but we'll work on that. But there's different things we can do with that. With strategic investment, we can make sure that our services are fully funded. We can make sure that we have you know, all the training programs for the city employees and, you know, a lot of opportunity. I just really like it to be like a family-friendly environment, both in the city and outside in the community. And the last one is, I just talked about it, beautification and smart growth. Let's make sure we preserve our natural heritage. You know, last summer I had to cut down a tree in my yard. It is probably a 65, 70-year-old laurel oak. It got hit by lightning. And, you know, it really hurt because, you know, the next tree I planted, by the time it's that big, I'll be dead. You know, it's kind of eye-opening to think of things like that because everything we got to do, we just have to think about this is the long term. If I cut this massive tree down today, I will never see a tree that size in my lifetime. And it's things like that. And just kind of always keep that kind of stuff in mentality, making sure you're making smart decisions.
Okay, thank you. And back to Commissioner Velasquez, which is the last question, so take your time with it. And it is, what is your vision and agenda for the next 4 years to improve the quality of life for all Apopka residents and businesses?
Well, we did touch on that, and we have touched on that, and it has to do with the south side of Apopka, is to finally address and come to an agreement how they are going to be incorporated as all of Apopka with the new redistricting that we are having from Tallahassee is going to change our landscape here. So it will be important for the city of Apopka not to just talk about it anymore, but to now do something about it and bring the south side of Apopka into the city. That's probably one of my focuses when we come back. And I don't want to say if, when I come back to the council. Certainly, I've been wanting to address also the city charter. That's important for us because as our city is growing, the demands for providing services and being accessible to our residents is growing also. And with 4 commissioners and 1 mayor, it's kind of hard to be one for everyone. So that's something that I will also focus on. And the other is really to bring our council, our staff, our mayor, all together to work together. The one thing that I really am proud of is the fact that each of us as commissioners, we bring different strengths to the dais. We bring different ideas to the dais. And one of the things that I enjoy is that one person may have a strength in finance, another one may have strength in real estate, and I tend to bring a strength of connecting with people and connecting where I want them to be involved in the city government. I want them to understand their role as residents. I want them to feel that they are being heard and that they're being valued. Not just the residents, but those that work in our staff that support us in order to help grow the city. So for me, that is really bringing a unity between the council, the city residents, and the staff. That's important to me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nesta, same question.
Yeah, and I mean, this is somewhat similar to the previous question. So, the South Apopka annexation, I think, is one of our biggest topics in Apopka, and it needs to be put to rest one way or the other. Like I had said multiple times already, let's have the conversations, let's create some action items, and then let's get it on the ballot to figure out how we get there. It's what was it, 1984 last time it was voted on? Let's actually get it to a place that we can vote on and stop talking about it. I think that's what I've heard more than anything else in the last month and a half is just that it's so up in the air and people are tired of that. It makes people very weary. And I think let's create some new strength, some new passion in Apopka by let's figure out South Apopka annexation. Let's knock off that topic. Let's close that loop. And again, I mean, I'm going to pretty much speak back to what I just spoke about, the creating the trust between the city council and the staff and citizens of Apopka. I think, again, creating that trust is going to be key. And you do that through open communication, making sure that there's no questions about why you're choosing something. There's no questions about what your incentive is to choose something or vote on something or bring that topic up. Open communication, I've said it a lot, and the joke of last candidate forum was workshops, and it really is. It's the vehicle to have a lot of open communication. I think that's the key. It helps us as commissioners, once I'm elected, to be able to have some open dialogue, and then again, it creates that open communication where there's no questions about where I stand, why I voted the way I did. You have trust that way. That's how a relationship is built, through open communication. That's why I have such a great marriage. It's through open communication. My wife, Lauren, doesn't always love to talk as much as I do, but I always do. And that's what is going to benefit the city the most, the citizens and the staff, is understanding why we made the decisions we did. And then it goes to promoting new businesses as well. And if we can promote as much as possible minority-owned and women-owned businesses, I think that's incredible. It's something. Go back to my wife. She wants to write books. So please, anytime you see her, promote books, please, because that's what I want. And it's awesome to see. And people have such incredible ideas. They just don't know how to get there sometimes, or they don't have just that small step up to get there. And I think that's something that would improve quality of life here in Apopka, is people that have that establishment or that business or whatever it may be, that they can say that's mine. That's incredible, and that's something that I want everyone to have, is that buy-in. And that will create more open communication, more trust, and that's what I want to see to improve the quality of life here in Apopka. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jimmy, same question.
Sure. Just, one thing, whenever I was in high school, I went to work for Walmart, and I really liked that because back then it was a little bit different company, but they were always trying new ways to look at things and trying different things, and there was a lot of complaints, like, why are we changing this, why are we changing that? And finally, I asked a vice president, I said, why are you guys changing things just for the sake of changing things? And they said, if we don't try it, we'll never know. So I think that was an impressing, and made a good impression on me. So one thing that I do, and I've always done in my entire career since then, is always go and ask 3 questions. I've asked a couple local businesses here, and those 3 questions are, what are we doing well? What aren't we doing well? And what aren't we doing that we need to be doing? And something that we need to consider. And I went around and asked a couple companies in Apopka that question the last couple weeks, and they said, oh, we'll get, that's kind of a deep question. We'll have to get back to you on that, which is fine. But those are the kind of things I'm going to do. I'm going to call businesses as a commissioner, and I'm going to be like, ask those 3 questions. Hey, maybe they'll hang up the phone on me. I hope not. Right now, they might hang up the phone because I'm a private citizen, but hopefully as a commissioner, I'll at least take the call. But focusing on a business-forward approach, that's my vision for the city, is to focus on making things, because we hear this time after time again, opportunities leaking to other cities, businesses, restaurants. We make sure we need to have industry here, so we have a lunchtime crowd and a dinner time crowd for our restaurants. I mean, we know that can be done because we have, people like Jay over at Propagate behind us. I went over and talked to him last week, real nice guy. Pretty impressive little operation. And, we know, everybody here probably knows Trod and Josh and Daryl and all those guys over at the 3 Odd Guys. Now you know, the 3 Odd Guys. But, these guys are, I call it the tip of the spear, because they're showing us the way forward. And they're showing us that there is a market for those kind of unique businesses in this town. And I want to use that to build on, to make Apopka. We don't need to be leaking opportunities to Winter Garden and Sanford and Mount Dora. We're never going to be those cities, and we shouldn't strive to be that either, because we're Apopka. But we can be different, and we can be unique, and we can, instead of leaking the opportunities there, we can keep them here. Hopefully, if somebody says, hey, I want to go to Crooked Can, they say, oh, I want to go to 3 Odd Guys, and maybe if I get my brewery open, they'll come down there too. Because again, somebody from Orlando, they might say, we're not going to drive to Apopka to go to one brewery, but if there's 2, maybe we'll stop up there because we can make an afternoon of it. Oh, by the way, now we're up here already. Let's go have dinner over here at Propagate, or the new restaurant that opened yesterday. There's a lot of new opportunity we could do here. Finally, I want to earn your trust and respect. I hope to earn your vote, but importantly to me is I look at the long game, and your trust and respect, that one, you're going to trust me to make good decisions, and you're going to respect me for those decisions that I make, because I'm looking at the long game here.
Thank you. As we said earlier, Mr. Eric Mock could not be here tonight because he had a conflict, and so he did send a statement that we told him that we would read into the record this night. So if you'll bear with me, I'll read his statement as if it was coming directly from him, because it is. And he says, I want to thank the Apopka involved voters for presenting this commissioner forum. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be with you this morning or this evening due to the long-planned engagement. I'm Eric Mock. I'm asking for your vote for Commission Seat 4. For 31 years, I've worked in healthcare as an executive, leading teams caring for those needing rehabilitation and extended care. I volunteered as a long-term care representative covering 7 counties with the Central Florida Disaster Medical Coalition, gaining grant money for additional educational training and disaster preparedness. I will be chairing the Senior Services of Apopka Committee. I'm a graduate of both the Florida Healthcare Association Future Leaders Program and the American Healthcare Association Future Leaders Program. I was honored when asked to be the single representative for the state of Florida at the American Healthcare Association Future Leaders Program. My career experience provided extensive knowledge in budgeting, customer satisfaction, quality assessment and improvement, employee retention, and satisfaction, to name a few. Now a realtor, I bring the same focus of customer satisfaction to my clients, helping achieve the American dream of home ownership. John F. Kennedy once used this quote in a 1963 speech, "A rising tide floats all boats." I think we heard that earlier tonight as well. As commissioner, we have the responsibility to lead by listening to all stakeholders of Apopka, working to gain a consensus, creating a plan, and then executing that plan, working to achieve the goal. We have many issues and challenges facing Apopka: smart economic development, annexation, Station Street development, Floridian Town Center, and the City Center, to name a few. I've listened to many during this campaign, share how much each one enjoys living in Apopka with a sense of community and willingness to help. For Apopka to continue moving forward, decisions need to be made. I will listen to all residents of Apopka, and then I will act in the best interest of Apopka. I will work for you and for all of Apopka. Together we can achieve success, being the tide that lifts all of Apopka. I'm Eric Mock, and I ask for your vote. And that was from Mr. Mock, obviously. I think we have a few seconds because we've ended a little faster than it would, so I'm going to take a moderator privilege here, and I'm going to go back and say, if we gave you 2 more minutes, Commissioner Velasquez, what would you tell us as a closing statement?
Well, as a closing statement, I have been the commissioner here. I served from 2014 to 2018, and that was a real learning curve for me. We came in following a very long administration at that time, so there was a lot to learn about governing, how to govern in a local city on that level. And then I went on to go to the Orange County Planning and Zoning Board, which again just opened up new doors, and I got to acquire a lot of knowledge about how developments go on a county level. And what I learned most was how much we were not really in partnership as a city commissioner with the county at that time. So I learned that as a city commissioner, we have to at least reach out to the county and nurture relationships with the county, with our state representatives, because what we can't do here on a local level, we have to network and ask our representatives to help us to get what we need for the city. I am back. I came back and did a special election because the sitting commissioner had resigned. So I kind of came in where the wheels were kind of already turning. So it was kind of catching up and seeing what was important, the goals that the city had at that time. And I'm very proud to say that I basically voted in favor of projects that were already in motion. And so I've been just going along and supporting the choices that were made and the goals that were set by the mayor at this time, and really just going out into the community again and advocating and being out there and just listening to the residents and gaining as much information from them so to help me be their representative.
Okay, wonderful. Mr. Nesta, same thing?
So is this my closing?
This is your close. If you'd like to take
Oh,
another
no,
second.
so yeah, I would. Because you asked me that. So I just want to say this. I would like to conclude to point out that I look for the positive side of things and the best in people. I think having people involved in issues and situations that are important to them and their families will benefit from their participation and involvement. I'm here to represent all in a respectful and, most importantly, in an honest way. I have always advocated transparency and truthfulness and will continue to do so, and ask for the residents for their vote on March 8th. Thank you. Vote
Thank
for
you.
Diane Velasquez.
Thank you. Mr. Ness, the same thing, and 3 minutes in closing, kind of wrap it in there as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you again to the Apopka involved voters. Really appreciate this forum. Thank you, Dr. Dunn, for moderating. And thank you to Victory Church for letting us use your facility, gorgeous facility, and we really appreciate it. Thank you to Lauren for going along with this journey with me. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've done great. So thank you. I truly do believe in this city. Apopka has incredible history, and I feel we have so much potential for sustainable growth, and I want to enhance the lifestyles of all citizens, not just a select few. I pledge to maintain open communication, be fiscally responsible, be a true advocate for citizens, champion sustainable growth, and build strong community partnerships. I've brought this up, and it's on my website as well in past forums, is that I have on my website a citizen bill of rights, excuse me. And basically what this outlines is what I pledge to the citizens once I'm elected, what I promise to do, and it's a rubric, it's not really a litmus test, but a rubric that you can match this to this. Do my actions follow what's written on here? And if they don't, call me out. This is what is unique to me as a soon-to-be commissioner, is that I want to follow this to a T, and if I deviate from it, you can hold me accountable to it. I want to be proud. I want all of us to be proud to call Apopka home, and our future generations to be happy to return home. Don't just hope for a better Apopka. Vote for it by voting Nest on March 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doomy, same thing. Closing statement and maybe a vision for what you'd like to see.
Sure. Just tell you a little bit about me. And, I'm kind of thinking back, and I mentioned earlier that I started out at Walmart, and I learned a lot there. And if I ever do enough in life to write a book about it, it's going to be said. Everything I learned at Walmart, because you can learn a lot about life, just even going down and witnessing people down there. But in 1996, I was 18 years old, and I was just about to go off to college. And every store, which our store had about 550 employees, they have to nominate one person to go to the headquarters to represent them at the annual meeting. And to much people's dismay and some people's unhappiness, I got selected out of 500 employees as being an 18-year-old kid to go on my first business trip down to Bentonville, Arkansas. And I had a good time on that visit, and there's still a picture on my desk of myself and Helen Walton standing in the arena with David Glass, who was the then CEO of Walmart. And it was just kind of a interesting scenario that I ended up going to college, and it was the David Glass School of Business. And I got to meet him up there and get it as well. But what does that say about me? I kind of relished being in the underdog role. That was a long shot for me to win that. And, I'd rather come from behind and that kind of stuff. But when I was looking at the city budget, $131 million budget and, 492 employees. And I was thinking, back in 2000, I was the youngest member of a Walmart store management team. We were the #1 store in the company doing $202 million in sales. And we had close to 600 employees. So it was very similar in the budgeting situation. And it was always kind of fun when people from college would come down and they'd see me because I had my name tag, management. Oh, you're one of the men? Yeah, what do you need, But it really taught me the benefit of solving problems and listening to people. Because that's what you need to do, is get out and walk the sales floor, talk to people, get out in the neighborhoods, talk to people, get into businesses, find out where people's pinch points is. One thing my vision is, I think Apopka is a great community. And there's a lot of really good people here. And my vision is to keep it that way. And, I've really enjoyed the last 6 weeks since I got into this rigmarole. My first thought was, oh boy, what have I signed up for? But I've really had a fun time. And as I told you earlier, Hank, if this is what work is, this has been the best 6 weeks I've had in the last 20 years considering work, because I've really enjoyed talking to people and getting to know a lot of different people. And it's really a great honor to sit up here with you two as well, because I think this is the best of Apopka. These are good people here. I think we're all good people, and you all are good for coming here tonight. And I'll close by saying this. Tonight's my birthday. I'm 44 years old today, and I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be than up here talking to you all, listening to your thoughts, answering questions. Hank, they could have been a little bit harder, but it sure was fun. Thank you. Vote on March 8th.
Happy birthday. Candidates, thank you for being here, and thank you for participating with us. It's just a chance for the community to see and hear more of you. So again, on behalf of all of us and the city of Apopka, thank you for all that you do. We hope the information has been informative to those in the audience and those maybe listening at home. And candidates, we wish you good luck in the campaign election, which is only just days away, so you're getting to the end, so hang in there. We also thank Victory Church for the use of their facilities and the Apopka chief for letting us use their streaming services. And we do encourage all citizens of Apopka to get engaged in the voting process. Your vote counts. And so tonight, again, we thank the candidates, we thank all those people who are listening and those in the audience, and we wish you safe travels and speedy times going home. Be safe. God bless you.